This is the most difficult thing I think I've ever done. It's the most difficult season. It's the most difficult role.
This was the first time I ever had this, albeit fleeting thought, that I don't want to do this. I've never had that thought before until season 6 started to become, an inevitable reality.
Yeah, all of the crucifixion. The 3 weeks we spent in Matera were...
The cameras were off. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sounds were muffled sobs and the heavy, uneven breathing of actors barely able to stand. Jonathan Roumie, still hanging on the wooden cross, was motionless, his body trembling under a weight far heavier than performance. What happened next wasn't scripted. There was no director's cue, no return to business as usual. The moment was so raw, so overwhelming, that even the most seasoned crew members of The Chosen, people with years in the industry, stood unprepared. Dallas Jenkins, creator and director, did something he had never done before. He stopped everything. Because what they had just witnessed was no longer acting. So what really happened behind the crucifixion scenes of season 6? Why did this one sequence leave actors, crew, and even the director in stunned silence? And what does it reveal about why this series has touched millions? This isn't just a story about a show. It's about something deeper, something that might change how you see faith, art, and even life itself. Let me ask you, have you ever watched a scene so real it pierced the screen and struck your soul? Not because of special effects or music, but because something sacred broke through the lens? That's what happened here. From the very beginning, The Chosen set itself apart from every other biblical production. It dared to strip away the distant, untouchable image of Jesus and reveal him as fully human, laughing, weeping, eating with friends, walking dusty roads. A Jesus who smiles, who grows weary, who feels pain. For millions, this portrayal wasn't revolutionary because it changed the story, but because it made the old story real again. Now, in its 6th season, the series faces its most daunting challenge, capturing the most heart-wrenching 24 hours in human history, the final day of Jesus on earth. The crucifixion has been portrayed countless times in art and film, most famously in The Passion of the Christ. But Jenkins wanted more than another reenactment. He wanted raw truth, emotional, unfiltered, without shortcuts or softened edges. That's why in June 2025, the cast and crew left the comfort of Texas and traveled to Matera, Italy, the same ancient city where The Passion was filmed. Its weathered streets and timeless light carry the weight of history. But no one, not even Jenkins, could have foreseen what would happen there. Picture it. Freezing winds tearing through the hills, a heavy gray sky, actors shivering, not just from cold, but from something deeper. Cameras rolled as Jonathan Roumie hung on the cross, his body shaking with exhaustion. Hours passed, crew members battled fatigue, some working into the night, and then came silence. Not because cut was called, but because something sacred descended on that set. People wept openly. Elizabeth Tabish, who plays Mary Magdalene, had to leave sobbing. Even hardened technicians, men and women used to chaos, stood frozen, tears streaming. Dallas Jenkins later confessed, "In all my years, I've never experienced anything like this. It didn't feel like filming anymore. It felt sacred." This wasn't just a scene. It was a collision of art and reality, history and the present. And it points to something urgent in our world today. We are drowning in distraction, yet starving for meaning. When the cross stops being a prop and becomes a mirror, that's when everything changes. For decades, filmmakers tried to bring Jesus to screen. Some delivered grandeur, others realism, but most shared a flaw: distance. Jesus was often portrayed as majestic yet unapproachable, a glowing figure people admired but never felt close to. The Chosen shattered that mold. Jenkins made a daring choice: show the Jesus of the Gospels not only preaching, but laughing, grieving, celebrating, and even growing weary. Fully divine, yes, but also fully human. That shift changed everything. Suddenly, people who had left faith or never believed at all felt something stir. They weren't just watching a story, they were meeting a person. And Jonathan Roumie's portrayal made it possible. His Jesus is approachable, tender, playful, someone who locks eyes, listens to fears, and lightens tension with a joke. That authenticity struck so deeply that The Chosen became a global phenomenon. Season 6 is in another league. From the beginning, Jenkins warned fans this season will break you. Every frame walks through the final 24 hours of Jesus' life: betrayal, agony, abandonment, and the cross. Watching an actor you've grown to love gasping for breath on rough wood, voice breaking with forgiveness, that's something else entirely. And it wasn't about shock value. Jenkins never cared for gore. His goal was to recover what modern culture often forgets: the cost of love. That's why location mattered. What began as another shoot became an unplanned spiritual encounter. Actors broke down in tears, not because of dialogue, but because the weight of what they were portraying pressed directly into their souls. Jenkins even asked fans to pray for the team, warning of the spiritual battles raging behind the scenes. And out of that crucible of exhaustion and faith, something rare emerged: authenticity. Not Hollywood gloss or staged drama, but raw, unfiltered truth. That's why this season isn't just entertainment, it's a mirror. A question carved into every viewer's soul. What does this story mean to you right now? Because here's the truth. In a world drowning in noise, people are starving for what feels real. When a series pulls back the curtain and lets truth bleed through the frame, it doesn't just tell a story, it invites transformation. Roumie, portraying Christ's final agony, entered what he later called a state of surrender. Not acting, not pretending, but something closer to spiritual immersion. For hours, he stayed on the cross, not just for cameras, but to keep the emotional continuity intact. He fasted leading up to the sequence. He prayed before takes. He stripped himself bare. Jenkins even warned him, "Pace yourself, don't burn out." Roumie's reply, "This isn't about me." That mindset came at a cost. Crew whispered about the eerie stillness between takes. Roumie barely spoke, never joked. His eyes, witnesses said, held a depth that made you look away. This wasn't method acting for glory, it was reverence. Hollywood loves stories of extreme dedication. De Niro gaining weight for Raging Bull, DiCaprio crawling through snow in The Revenant. But what happened in Matera wasn't about Oscars. It was about offering the truest possible depiction of history's most sacred moment. No green screens, no CGI blood, no safe, sterile stage. Just raw elements and raw humanity. Jenkins avoided every shortcut because he knew if the crucifixion felt staged, the season would collapse under the weight of inauthenticity. So they bled for it, figuratively and almost literally. This is where art crosses into something more. Make no mistake, what Jenkins attempted was risky. Studios hate unpredictability. Weather delays cost money. Emotional overload burns actors out. But Jenkins gambled everything on one conviction: truth matters more than convenience. And it paid off. Early screeners reportedly left insiders shaken and speechless. One reviewer admitted, "I thought I'd seen the crucifixion before. I hadn't. Not like this." What makes it different isn't the gore or the camera tricks. It's the invisible weight captured on screen. The tension you can't fake because it isn't being performed, it's being lived. And here's what most people miss. This shoot redefines how sacred stories can be told in modern media. For decades, Christian films carried a reputation for being cheap, preachy, or sanitized. The Chosen blows that stereotype apart, fusing spiritual integrity with cinematic excellence. Jenkins didn't just create a show. He lit a movement. He launched more than a show. He launched a movement. One industry insider even called The Chosen the first faith-based series to compete head-to-head with prestige television. And at the heart of it all lies the crucifixion sequence, its crown jewel. A scene so raw and immersive that even skeptics are forced to grapple with its emotional weight. But the bigger question is, what does that mean for us? When a production team goes to such extremes for truth, it holds up a mirror. How much truth are we willing to settle for in our own lives? How often do we avoid discomfort, even when something real is on the other side? The actors didn't leave Matera the same. And maybe we won't either, because when art stops being a product and becomes a pilgrimage, it leaves scars. Holy scars. When the cameras stopped rolling, what lingered wasn't noise or chatter. It was silence, heavy with a question. What do you do with a love like this? For the actors, the answer came in tears and trembling hands. For the crew, in hushed conversations long past midnight. For Jonathan Roumie, it came as surrender so deep he could barely describe it. But for us, the ones watching from a distance, the answer isn't simple. If this story is true, if the cross means what it claims to mean, then it isn't just a scene to admire, it's a choice to confront. And here's the reality. We live in an age of shortcuts, happiness in a click, purpose in a podcast, love in a swipe. Yet the more we chase easy, the emptier we feel. That's why this matters. What happened on that hill in Matera isn't just a behind-the-scenes story. It's a signal flare in the dark. A reminder that real love isn't painless. It costs. It bleeds. And in a culture terrified of sacrifice, that truth feels radical. So here's my challenge. When you see this crucifixion, not as stained glass, not as legend, but as flesh and blood brought painfully close, don't look away. Let it break you. Let it unsettle you. Because that disruption is an invitation to live truer, love deeper, and give more. The cameras may have stopped in Matera, but the story hasn't. It's still being told, and now it's yours to carry. If this moved you, share it. Comment below. What does this kind of love mean to you? And if you're ready to go deeper, watch the next video on your screen. Because when the cross stops being a scene and becomes a mirror, everything changes.